Climate change, the sixth mass extinction, freshwater scarcity, global financial collapse, peak oil, peak soil, global financial inequality. All of these are serious crises that we're facing as a human society here on planet Earth today. But the truth is that each of these is really just a symptom of a larger fundamental cause, namely the way that we see ourselves in the world. Now, that understanding of human beings in the world for the last few thousand years, at least in the West, has really come from a story that we've been told about the creation of the universe, right? How did the world come to be, and where do humans fit into that? And that story, there's a few different iterations in different cultures and different religions, but the basic story is there's an all-powerful being somewhere out there who creates ex nihilo a fully formed world with stars and planets and rocks and trees and animals and human beings. And humans alone are created, a few jerks thrown in there, right? Humans alone are created in that being's image, and we are special and apart from the rest of the creation. And that's pretty problematic. There's a lot of good things in there. There's a lot of stuff, care for creation, all that kind of stuff. But what's happened is it's resulted in the situation where we understand the rest of the stuff in the world that is not human to be there for our use, for us to have dominion over. And it results in things like human beings having rights and value, but no other being on planet Earth given any rights or values in our laws, right? This is the fundamental cause of all these challenges. The good news is we have a new story that's emerging. This is a story, some of us know it. It starts with the Big Bang, approximately 13.8 billion years ago. And evolved out of that has been stars and galaxies and planets and life and plants and animals and finally humans here in 2016. And that story is a little bit different from the old story that we've heard because it's really a universe that has evolved out of through an emergent process. And so we've had the story for a while, right? We've had this story for maybe 100 years. We teach it in the schools. But the truth is we really haven't had sort of really assimilated the lessons from this story into all of our laws, all of our values, our normative statements of good and bad and right and wrong. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first is that it's a scientific story. And science very explicitly doesn't lend itself to normative statements. It doesn't talk about meaning, doesn't talk about right and wrong, good and bad. But the other thing is that this story we don't really understand the end goal of this story, right? In the old story, the goal was to live in a certain way, and when we're done with this earthly tomb, this body, we are to be reunited with that all-powerful being in an afterlife. That's kind of the ultimate goal of that story. This story, we know about the Alpha, right? We know about the Big Bang, but what about the Omega? Where is it all going? What is the meaning of the universe? Are you guys ready to learn the meaning of the universe? The meaning of the universe is that we don't know the meaning of the universe. We don't know the ultimate goal of the universe, but that not knowing is in itself profoundly meaningful. Because it is in not knowing the ultimate goal of the universe that we come to understand what the meaning of our lives is today, here in 2016 on planet Earth. It is because we don't know where it's going that we come to learn that the purpose of our existence today in 2016 is to create a shift on planet Earth to deal with these challenges and allow for people to exist in 500 or 1,000 years, and maybe they'll know more about the ultimate meaning of the universe. Our mission is to shift human society from a destructive presence on planet Earth to a mutually beneficial presence with all of life, and get to the grandkids. Let the grandkids figure out what the Omega point is, okay? And so that's kind of like, if we're going to solve these problems, the most important thing we need to do is get people to buy into this understanding that we're all part of this emergent thing called the universe, right? Now, that's pretty abstract. So how do we go about making the conditions that allow for humans to be around in 500 or 1,000 years? What are the practical steps we need to take to make that happen. And in my opinion, the most important thing we need to do to invest in is something called resilient community organizing. So what this is really focusing community by community to create shifts in our own towns, neighborhoods, to build up resilience, to build up the ability to withstand the challenges that are coming from climate change, from peak oil, from financial collapse, right? So this is kind of a little bit of a different thing than what traditionally people working on environmental issues. This is a cultural movement. This is about creating a cultural shift. And if we do it in a fun, sexy, cool way, then that's going to spread, right? And then we're going to create a cultural movement. And that's really what we need. Traditionally, when people are working on environmental issues, they're really interested in lobbying politicians, right? Stopping the pipeline, or lobbying Congress for clean energy money. And I think, while I'm glad that people are doing that work, I think it's a little bit wrong-headed. I think it's putting the cart before the horse. Politicians are not leaders. Politicians in a democratic society are, by definition, followers. Okay? And if we can't create a shift in the culture, the politicians aren't ever going to, there's always going to be another pipeline, right? There's always going to be another challenge. We have to create a shift in the culture, and if we can do that and get enough people to buy into this new way of living, then the politicians will follow the shift in the culture. And so what we need to be focusing on is building that resilient community. We need to be developing a local food system. We need to be making it so people can ride their bike around and not use cars. We need to be developing local currencies and local economies, right? And I think this is one of the things that people, is one of the misconceptions. When people talk about sustainability and resilience, they think, oh, we're gonna have to give up our lifestyle. And the truth is, building a resilient Toledo, resilient anywhere, is going to create so much more abundance, right? We're not going to ship all our money to Walmart headquarters or Best Buy headquarters, right? We're going to have local businesses thriving. We're not going to be dumping oil-based fertilizer into the lake and ruining our water supply, right? So this is going to make a much better society and a better area. So some of you know, as Molly said, I moved here from San Francisco. I was out there for the last 10 years. And I was doing this work out in Toledo Resilient Community, out in San Francisco in Resilient Community Organizing. And San Francisco is a great place to live. It's a wonderful town, but it's actually a really terrible place to do this kind of work. And there's a couple main reasons for that. Lots of little reasons, a couple main reasons why I think that Toledo and the Rust Belt and Great Lakes in particular is a better place to build this movement that we need to create. The first is cost of living. So this is recent information. There are no typos on here. This is true. The median price for a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco right now is $3,500 a month, okay? And it's not just San Francisco. It's Denver, it's New York, it's Boston, it's Seattle, it's Portland, it's Austin, it's DC. It's all of the traditional cultural centers in America are experiencing the same affordability crisis. And the big reason for this is, for the first time in about 50 years, it's cool to live in urban centers, and that's great. But the last time people, as a generation, all wanted to live in urban centers was 50 years ago, and there were literally 100 million fewer people in America at that time. So these cities simply don't have the infrastructure to take in all of these people, and what you're seeing is crazy rent prices. And if you're interested in developing local food, or lobbying for bike lanes, or being an artist, or developing local currencies, it's pretty hard to survive when it's $3,500 a month. Turns out those things don't pay very well. Trust me, right? Trust me. So that's, on contrast, you don't see any Rust Belt cities in there, right? Affordability is really tremendous here. And then the other main reason, I think a lot of people in this room know about this, but I think maybe people watching at home don't really have an understanding of this. Fresh water. We have a drought in San Francisco and California in general, the Southwest. Water is already an issue. It's going to become more and more of an issue over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years when this transformation is going to be taking place. The Great Lakes, this is a picture of the Great Lakes Watershed. The Great Lakes is 21% of the world's fresh water. Not America's fresh water, 21% of the world's fresh water. And we have an agreement amongst all the states in the Great Lakes and the provinces in Canada that are part of that watershed. It's called the Great Lakes Compact. And all of that water belongs to the people in that watershed. So this is a really key piece of, to why people should be coming to this area to really be pursuing this work. This is going to be the place to be over the next 20, 30 years. And so while there's some great things going for this area, there's one last piece that I think we need to work on. So I have a saying, resilience is an attitude. And what that means is a resilient community is made up of local food system, local manufacturing, local water supply, local energy, all that kind of stuff. But at its core, a resilient community is made up of resilient individuals. And we actually have a great head start here, right? The Rust Belt's famous for sort of dealing with economic challenges and fighting through challenges. And certainly the cold winters and the hot summers, the softies in California don't really have any concept of that. So we actually have a great start on that. But there's actually an esoteric meaning to resilience as an attitude that I think we need to work on a little bit here. And that really comes back to what I started talking about and the story of evolutionary cosmology. And resilience as an attitude is recognizing that we're here after 13.8 billion years of evolution. And what a miracle that is, that we are here, we can sit here and talk to each other and reflect on this story. And not only are we here, but we're here at this moment in time when it's not a guarantee whether we're going to make it or not, right? It's going to be decided over the next 20, 30, 40 years whether we're going to build the future that's going to allow for human beings to be thriving on this planet, or we're going to descend into some sort of hellscape. And that is really such an honor, such a responsibility. And so I think resilience as an attitude reflects the sort of understanding that we need to be sort of recognizing that what we're doing is historic. If we are successful, they're going to tell stories, they're going to make songs about us for generations to come. And so, if we're gonna have faith in the world, right? Like, maybe Omega Point is we're just scum on the rock and we just snuff out. Maybe there's no meaning to any of this. But I choose, because of the sort of what's come before me, because of everything, all the struggle that's come before me, I choose to have faith that there is some meaningful Omega Point that we're moving towards, that there is meaning to this. And I have that faith simply because of what's come before me, to honor all of the struggle and all of the sort of miracle that has come before us. And so, if we are to have faith in the world, we must, above all, have faith in ourselves. And so I think one thing that this region, Toledo, Rust Belt, Great Lakes, if we can just get that faith in ourselves and realize that we are capable of creating this transformation. If we don't believe it, if we don't believe we can do it, then we're not going to do it, right? But if we do believe in ourselves and if we do have that faith, there's no telling what's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to creating this transformation with all of you. Thank you.